Welcome to Panda Head Studios. Now that you're here, don't forget to join the Panda Force by hitting that subscribe button. Today we're talking about Immortal Hulk issue 2. This issue is like a total upgrade, level up, whatever, of the previous issue in regards to story, dialogue, even the artwork. Not that the artwork in the previous issue wasn't awesome and very well done. It's all the same people, and I just absolutely love it. And it starts off with Bruce Banner on a bus, and he's just thinking about like the Hulk and his situation, and he explains to the audience about like the rules of the Hulk in the Immortal series, where he's nocturnal. He only comes out at night, and Bruce is afraid. He's thinking he shouldn't be sleeping in the night anymore because he keeps having this reoccurring dream. Rather than being tormented by the gamma bomb that turned him into the Hulk, he is now being tormented by a Geiger counter. And then he ends up going to a restaurant just to enjoy the simple things. And he just thinks about how he could talk to Betty and Doc Samson, but he's not ready to do that. And I just love how that little part where he talks about how he eats the eggs, where he puts salt on the whites and pepper on the yolk. It just it makes him like a proper person, and how he has this individual identity, and how he just talks about how he enjoys just his senses, like that's all he has. And then he has this consistent thing that happens through reoccurring through the whole issue about this tingle he has, where the arrow was shot in his head, and he says it in the back of his head, and it's clearly referencing when Hawkeye shot him in the head, in the face with a gamma arrow. And he like decides to leave because he recognizes it's about to get tonight, and then he stumbles upon a newspaper at a newsstand, and it has some article about the people mysteriously dying, and he just wants to, like, his whole motivation for just wandering around, like in the 80s TV show, is just to go around and do good things to kind of make up for all the bad things Hulk does. Because for some reason, everyone always wants to blame, even the writers want to blame Hulk for all the bad things he does. He's not just some, like, I just don't like that particular interpretation of Hulk myself. But then he like goes and investigates that news article, and of course he just goes to a bar, and he asks the people in the local bar. It's a small town, so it kind of makes sense. Everyone's kind of in everyone's business, and they talk about the first kid who had it, and he died. So that leads Banner to go to a cemetery, and he just goes to the kid's grave, and it turns out that he was that the grave is irradiated, and he goes to the phone and calls the emergency services and tells them that there's radiation there, and of course they don't believe him. Then he says, "I'm Bruce Banner. That's how I know there's gamma radiation here," and he knows that's going to get their attention because he's thought to be dead, even though like recently there was this lady named McGee who wrote a story about the Hulk, and that's where it really gets like where this issue starts to get really interesting, is because then he wanders to a cave that's glowing green, and he's just like, this is just worth investigating. And it turns out there's the doctor who was working on this cure for cancer, whose son was the first victim of this radiation. And the doctor appears, and he's all irradiated. It looks amazing. It's kind of reminds me of like Blight from Batman Beyond. And this character is super popular at this point for some reason. I don't really follow that kind of stuff in comic books. I just read them and enjoy them. And then he strangles Bruce Banner, saying he can't let anyone know where he is because he's hiding, kind of similar to the Hulk, because that's like a consistent theme in anyone who has gamma powers, is they're always very reclusive and weird, except for a handful of people. And then then Bruce Banner's thinking about how Banner can die, but the Hulk can't, and then he transforms into the Hulk. And then he starts talking to the doctor, and very much like the robber in the previous issue, where he's just kind of calling him out on all the bad stuff he's done. And the doctor has a similar mentality of how he's just kind of a victim of more of a victim of circumstance than he was doing anything intentionally malicious. And he was trying to cure his son, who was like going to be a college athlete, star quarterback, and he had sick, and then he tested out gamma treatment for to cure cancer, and that is what leads him to become this like the radioactive skeleton. And I just love that little like piece of that story because it just like it's a nice parallel to Bruce Banner to where he ended up experimenting on himself and it went well and he did it to his son and at first it was great for his son and then his son died. Then the doctor talks about how he wanted to die and go into nothingness. And it's very on the theme of like Jungian psychology, which they mention in the issue. And then Hulk kind of obliges him and just traps him in the cave. And he's like begging anything but this. And it's like that's what I love about this Hulk is he's very chatty, but not like he doesn't talk so much, but he's intelligent. And then the last panel of the whole issue is the radioactive response team digs up the grave of the son, and it turns out he has the same issue as his dad, and he's like reaching out. It looks really cool, and I like it, just that whole story and how the story beats and like what it explains about the Hulk because it's like defining what the Immortal Hulk's rules are because the cool thing about the Hulk is he's got what's called dissociative identity disorder. So whatever like character traits can be like there's whatever version of Hulk there is, like they all have these different rule sets because he can just have a bajillion different kinds of Hulks in his mind. And you find out that like Banner can't make like the shields and all the fantastical science stuff he was wielding previously. They kind of re-rolling and retconning that back to like Banner just kind of being a simple nuclear physicist as opposed to like a Mr. Fantastic level intellect and technology. And it just this issue was so good. It makes me just like made me when it came out like super excited for the next issue. And I would highly recommend that you would continue reading this series because where it goes from here, it just keeps getting better and better. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this issue or the series as a whole in the comments down below. Now that you are part of the Panda Force, don't forget to hit that bell icon for future orders. And if you'd like to join me in gaming, follow me on Twitch. And for future updates, follow on Twitter. Links are in the description down below.